The suspicions this Thursday night about what downed an Azerbaijani airliner. The initial findings, it may have been hit by Russian air defenses.
We can see that it's full of what appears to be shrapnel holes.
And what could be key to learning what happened. Israel bombards power plants and an airport in Yemen. The airstrikes targeting Houthi rebels. Confining students. The calls to regulate seclusion rooms in Alberta schools or ban them altogether. Plus, adorable BFFs at the barn.
So they've begun, sharing breakfast with one another.
One pig, one cat, and their unbreakable bond.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Russia is urging caution about suggestions a plane that crashed in Kazakhstan on Christmas Day may have been hit by Russian air defense systems. The Azerbaijan Airlines plane carrying 62 passengers and 5 crew went down in a fiery crash. 38 people were killed. Before it went down, the plane was seen losing and regaining altitude. This flight radar data shows how it veered up and down multiple times during its final minutes before impact. Its altitude and vertical speed fluctuating, suggesting pilots were struggling to maintain control of the aircraft. The plane split in two, yet somehow there are survivors. Why the flight that was en route from Baku, Azerbaijan to Grozny in Chechnya changed course to Kazakhstan is one of the many questions under investigation, as Redmond Shannon reports.
Most of the survivors of Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8243 were pulled from its tail section, the part of the plane which remained mostly intact, with the notable exception of these holes. Azerbaijan media and Reuters news agency are reporting that preliminary findings from Azeri authorities indicate a Russian missile hit the jet as it initially tried to land in the Russian city of Grozny, a part of Russia that has been targeted by Ukrainian drones this month. Russia had first claimed a possible bird strike incident, with the Kremlin later warning against promoting what it called other hypotheses.
But in my opinion, it would be impossible for a bird strike to be contributory to what had happened. What I think will be interesting is autopsies. Were they killed by the effects of the crash, or were they killed by bullet shells that came through the cockpit?
One surviving passenger reportedly said the plane tried to land 3 times in foggy conditions in Grozny, and on its third attempt, he said there was an explosion. This passenger video shows apparent damage to the wing. Inside, passengers wore oxygen masks, suggesting the plane may have depressurized. According to flight tracking websites, the aircraft headed toward Grozny and tried to land, but those movements are not clear. It was then diverted 400 kilometers east across the Caspian Sea before crash landing in Aktau, Kazakhstan. Most of the passengers were from Azerbaijan, the country holding a national day of mourning Thursday. If the cause is found to be a Russian missile, it would be reminiscent of the shooting down of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 over Ukraine in 2014. A Dutch-led investigation found Russia responsible for the tragedy that killed almost 300 people. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
The Israeli army has launched a series of attacks in Yemen, hitting targets in the capital city, the international airport, and power plants. It claims Houthi rebels were using those locations to smuggle Iranian weapons into the region, weapons that were being fired on Israel. The head of the World Health Organization happened to be at the airport in Yemen when it was hit. As Mackenzie Gray explains, Israel's prime minister is signaling this is just the beginning of an assault on the Houthi rebels.
Chaos at Yemen's main international airport. Bags and blood strewn across the arrivals terminal, part of a significant Israeli escalation in attacks against the Houthis in Yemen, which killed at least 4 people, according to state media. A UN delegation was at the airport during the attack, including the Director General of the World Health Organization, who tweeted, "As we were about to board our flight from Sana'a about 2 hours ago, the airport came under aerial bombardment. One of our plane's crew members was injured." Adding the control tower, departure lounge, and runway just meters away from where he was were all damaged in the attack. This is part of a larger set of strikes against what Israel calls Houthi infrastructure, including 3 ports and 2 power plants. The Israeli defense minister saying, whoever hurts Israel, we will hurt them, referencing recent attacks by the Houthis on Tel Aviv. A missile and drones breaking through the Israeli defense missile system, a rare occurrence, leading to 16 people being injured. The Canadian government lists the Houthis as a terrorist group, who outside of attacking Israel, have also hijacked several commercial ships in the region. The Houthis are the last of the Iranian-backed proxy groups still fully engaged in the war, with Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Assad regime in Syria either collapsed or significantly weakened. Adding the Houthis to that list, a key objective of the Israeli Prime Minister. We will strike them to the bitter end until they learn. Hamas learned, Hezbollah learned, and Syria learned. The Houthis will learn too, a stance that could complicate ceasefire talks in Gaza, which are unlikely to be completed by the end of the year. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Ottawa.
Gaza's health ministry says 5 Palestinian journalists working for the Al-Quds Today channel were killed in an overnight Israeli strike in central Gaza. Their broadcasting van marked Press took a direct hit outside a hospital. Israel's military says it carried out what it calls a targeted attack against a vehicle carrying members of Islamic Jihad. It claims the men were posing as journalists. Syria's transitional rebel-led government says it has launched a security crackdown in western Syria after 14 policemen were killed by supporters of ousted President Bashar al-Assad. The violence is in a coastal region that is home to many members of Assad's Alawite sect. The new administration, led by former al-Qaeda affiliate HTS, says its forces have been ambushed while trying to arrest a former officer. The violence is the deadliest outburst since Assad fled Syria from Moscow less than 3 weeks ago. Thousands of people in BC were without power on Christmas Day after storms hit Vancouver Island and BC's south coast. Hundreds of people in the region are still without power. Heavy rain and strong winds of up to 90 kilometers per hour knocked down power lines overnight on Christmas and into this morning. The stormy weather led BC ferries to cancel many sailings yesterday between the island and the lower mainland, but the schedule is now back to normal. December 26th is a big shopping day, and Canadians were either out in malls or looking for deals online. And with the ongoing tax holiday that applies to many items, there was reason to believe you could get a lot of bang for your buck. Sean O'Shea looks at the rush of shoppers and why some didn't quite find the bargains they were hoping for.
The day after Christmas, traditionally one where consumers go shopping for sought-after items at lower prices.
I always look forward to this season to buy lots of my stuff, to restock.
Boxing Day shopping is also a social event.
They're, kind of wanting to get out of the house. It gives them something to do.
We're going to a play, and it doesn't start till a little bit, so we came shopping.
In a month that saw a postal strike and a first-of-a-kind HST-GST holiday on some items.
There's Boxing Day and there's no taxes, so it's probably like 30% cheaper than usual.
And shoppers may continue to buy tax-discounted items into the middle of February, stocking up on some during a typically slow period for retailers.
We've never done this before, so we have nothing to base any predictions on.
Right now,
we're looking for the best deal possible.
In Edmonton, no long lineups at this big box store this year, and no urgency.
If I don't get it, I'll try again next time.
But sales drew heavy traffic outside an outlet mall near the Vancouver airport.
Yes, it's lots of fun.
Unlike previous years, retailers aren't so desperate to dump stock.
They don't have those same huge inventories that they've had in the past to liquidate.
And many consumers, fixated on price, aren't impressed.
20% is not really a sale.
We're also more jaded. 10% off, 20% off, 10% off what?
For one small-scale entrepreneur with a clothing line focused on pregnant women, Boxing Day is an opportunity to show and tell at a crowded mall.
On a day like today, it's all about just getting out in person, talking to the shoppers.
Canadians will be pulling out their wallets this week.
More than $1 billion of consumer money will be spent.
But as for setting shopping records,
I think it's going to be not the strongest holiday season that we've seen.
Gift cards are some of the most popular presents to send and receive. And this year, because of the postal strike, digital gift cards were more popular than ever. In the next few days, consumers will be out using them to shop for themselves. Donna.
Okay, Sean O'Shea in Toronto tonight, thanks. There were some somber commemorations today to mark 20 years since the devastating Indian Ocean tsunami. Vigils took place in a number of countries, including Thailand and Indonesia, to remember the roughly 230,000 people who died in 2004 in one of the deadliest events in recorded history. A 9.1 magnitude earthquake west of Sumatra set off a mammoth wave that was recorded as high as 16 stories. It decimated coastlines in over a dozen countries, displacing more than 1 million people. In Mozambique, more than 1,500 inmates have escaped prison in the East African country's capital. Police say at least 33 others died in a prison riot that led to the breakout. Just over 100 fugitives have been recaptured. It's added to the tension in the capital, where there have been violent protests and looting over the country's disputed election results. The top opposition candidate has declared himself the winner and called on Mozambicans to shut down the country. Wildfires in Australia are intensifying because of extreme heat and strong winds. At least 4 fires are out of control in the southeastern state of Victoria, where temperatures have reached 37 degrees Celsius. The largest fire has burned through about 55,000 hectares. No homes have been damaged, but authorities warn conditions are ripe for the fires to become uncontrollable and uncontainable. Climate change is increasing the frequency and severity of wildfires in Australia. Seclusion rooms in Alberta schools. Coming up, what parents and critics say needs to be done with them. It's been 5 years since Alberta's UCP government scrapped a ban on seclusion rooms in schools. The rooms are supervised confined spaces where students who are believed to pose a danger to themselves or others are placed. As Lisa McGregor reports, critics and some parents want to get rid of them, or at least put in place rules on how they're built and used.
You need to be able to trust that your child, your nonverbal child, is safe at school.
Marcy Oakes says that wasn't the case for her son Aiden. She's still in a legal battle over the use of a seclusion room as involuntary confinement in an Alberta school.
Aiden was extremely abused and traumatized.
Among the 214 public schools in Edmonton, there are currently 111 seclusion rooms. 33 have been decommissioned since the start of the 2024-25 school year.
There is more rules and regulations on the boiler that heats a school than a room that will lock a child in.
Derek McCauley wrote a comprehensive guide to seclusion rooms to ensure safety and reduce risk.
We should be seeing downward trends on use of seclusion rooms. If I can't get them totally removed, we should at least have it at the forefront of how often they're being used, who's using them, what steps are being made to reduce the use.
He says if they are going to be used, the government should legislate how they can be used.
And in that act, it will outline how the rooms will be designed, what materials will be used, what types of locks will be used, and most importantly, the processes that will be outlined while we're using the room.
Ultimately, it's up to school authorities to build seclusion rooms and set standards. The Alberta government didn't address the call for legislated standards, but said these safe spaces are only used during exceptional situations when there is a significant and imminent risk to the safety of students, their peers, and others. Edmonton Public Schools said the rooms are used as a last resort, but groups who oppose seclusion rooms aren't satisfied with either response.
Repeated use of seclusion is a clear sign that you're failing as in terms of your practices.
Many want the money on seclusion rooms spent elsewhere.
Do we spend it on hiring a new EA and train them properly, or do we spend them on buying a barbaric or building a barbaric room to lock up kids like we're back in the Stone Ages?
Lisa McGregor, Global News.
Game changers ahead. A look back on a landmark year for women in sports. After a year of shattering records and racking up medals, Canadian swimmer Summer McIntosh has another accolade to add to her long list of accomplishments. For the second year in a row, the Canadian press has named McIntosh Female Athlete of the Year. 2024 has been stellar for her. She became the first Canadian to win 3 gold medals at a single Olympics, all before she turned 18. McIntosh is just one of the athletes who helped catapult women's sports to the forefront in 2024. This year, the puck dropped on the Professional Women's Hockey League's first game. The WNBA added its first Canadian team, and Canada's first pro soccer league for women, the Northern Super League, will kick off its inaugural season in the spring. Eric Sorensen looks at the year that was and what fans can look forward to next year.
2024. There's never been a year like it in women's sports, starting with Caitlin Clark, Time Magazine's top U.S. athlete, male or female. Clark made women's college basketball must-see TV.
And my main focus is on just playing basketball. I think that's the biggest thing.
And alongside established black stars, she then helped the WNBA score a $2 billion media deal.
It's truly remarkable the leap this league has taken, and there are really few parallels like it in terms of suddenness in really all of sports.
And yet, 2024 saw an entirely new women's professional league take to the ice and take the sports world by storm.
The start of something new, like again, we've put on hold for 3 years to make sure we're going to have a professional hockey league.
In its first season, the PWHL had 1 million followers online, 20,000 fans for one game in Montreal, and more than 40 brand partnerships.
Certainly exceeded all of our expectations as it related to attendance and viewership and merchandise sales.
To some, it's no surprise.
The time has been ready for the women's market. Consumers were ready and wanted to consume women's sports, and key stakeholders had invested.
In Canada, it's being called more than a moment for women's sports. It's a movement. In pro hockey, 3 of the original 6 teams are in Canadian cities: Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. With expansion planned next year, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Quebec City, and Halifax are reportedly under consideration, along with more American cities. Now, the WNBA has been around for almost 30 years, and it's expanding too, welcoming its first Canadian team, the Toronto Tempo, in 2026. And women's pro soccer is coming. An all-Canadian Northern Super League was announced in 2024 and will start next April with 6 teams from coast to coast.
We are AFC Toronto. In our world, everyone has a chance to shine.
The new league sees momentum building to empower girls and women's sports in this country.
We're setting our sights high because we don't think there's any reason not to, given our player pool, given the companies that are behind this.
But Canadian women's soccer in 2024 will also be remembered for scandal. Evidence that drones were used for years to spy on other teams, finally discovered on the eve of the Olympics in Paris, a national embarrassment that saw coach Bev Priestman sent home and a house cleaning undertaken in the sport. But there was also a poignant celebration in the women's game this year. Christine Sinclair, the greatest international scorer of all time, retired, and now sees new opportunities for girls in pro soccer.
These young girls now growing up will have a completely different reality than people like Steph and I had. And that makes me excited for the future.
The end of one era gave way to the start of another. Summer McIntosh, barely 18 years old, won 3 gold medals in swimming. The star of the Summer Olympics is demonstrating that female athletes are increasingly recognized as lucrative brand representatives.
We look at who's the most followed athletes on Instagram or other social medias, and that translates to dollars.
For McIntosh, it's getting used to all the attention, even from airport security.
They were like, what are these round like medal things? And I was like, they're Olympic medals. And they're like, how many do you have? And I was like, 4. And they're like, okay, you're good.
2024 will be remembered for historic breakthroughs in women's sport in Canada.
I think it's going to be something that we can look back on and be really proud that we were once a part of it.
And the future promises more growth and exciting rivalries.
Can't wait to play Toronto.
Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Best buds next, how a pig and a cat became inseparable. There's no explaining why some animals form bonds with other species, unlikely friendships that endure even though they appear to have nothing in common. At an animal sanctuary in Alberta, a cat and a pig have become best buddies, a friendship that is warming the hearts of the humans who care for them. Nicole Stillger explains.
Meet Gordo, a pot-bellied pig who lives at an animal sanctuary east of Wetaskiwin called Farm.
He came in as a very, very small pig, very stunted in his growth, so we knew that there was some form of underlying issues with him medically.
The sanctuary takes in surrendered and abandoned farm animals needing specialized care. Gordo has a heart condition called endocarditis and has to live on his own. Not ideal for pot-bellied pigs.
He needs blankets and different heat requirements than the other pot-bellied pigs. He needs a very low dust environment because his heart struggles quite a bit. So any complications with his lungs or with other organs put even further strain on his heart.
About a year ago, an unusual friendship started to blossom between Gordo and another animal there.
I think their relationship started out obviously because Gordo has, the best house on the property. So of course, who doesn't want to be a part of that?
Jade is a feral cat who appeared at the sanctuary one day. She started hanging out in Gordo's lavish lodge, likely out of necessity at first, but now by choice.
So they began, sharing breakfast with one another. And if you know anything about pigs, you know that they don't share their breakfast willingly. But Gordo always makes space for her in his dishes.
Melissa Martel says usually at any point in the day you can find them curled up together.
She absolutely adores him. And she has the opportunity to go anywhere she wants. She's not confined in any way.
Martel says there's also been a noticeable shift in her temperament, becoming much less fearful of people.
You can just see the change in her personality. Now that she's been in Gordo's life and his space, she's a totally different cat.
And while Gordo has a good life and is getting the best care here, his medical situation has kept him pretty isolated. So this unexpected bond is welcome.
To see him have this relationship, have that company, and have someone stick around because they love him as well is just, it's heartwarming for us, and it's a sigh of relief for us as well.
Nicole Stillger, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Sturgeon County, Alberta. We would love to see your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Anne Gaviola will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I will see you again in 2025. Bye-bye.